Just imagine being a black and brown kid and all of the books, there's nobody that looks like you. It taints your perception of what the world is. And so for me, it was very important. Like, you'll see a lot of different races in the book, but my main characters remain kids of color. And that's intentional because slightly over 10% of children's books have black kids as main characters. And for other minority groups, it's even less.
Extraordinary people in our community, I would say, are
Positively Milwaukee.
I'm excited to have you join us.
PozCast.
All right, another episode of Positively Milwaukee's PozCast, and I am here with Dionne Grayson. And Dionne, you know, I knew who you were. I just asked you this a few years ago, because when I saw the book, I said, she looks familiar. You do a lot of things, and you inspire a lot of people. But I think the first time I became aware of you was you were a woman of influence. With the Milwaukee Business Journal. And that you were doing what, Lead to Change?
Yes.
Inspiring students to find their career paths, their passion. Now you're authoring books.
I am, and having a good time. Having a good time with it.
What led you into this newfound career?
It is. It's what's taking up a lot of my time these days. So yes, absolutely, I'd say that. Probably about right before COVID, a really dear friend of mine, she had an author lab, and she asked me to participate because she felt like I had something to say. And so you have those people in your life that you trust. And I said, okay. I honestly didn't even realize what I was getting myself into. And so my intent was to write children's books, but that wasn't the plan. I felt led to do something just a little bit different. And so I wrote a book for adults. It's called The Making Trust God to Be the Chairman of Your Boardroom. And so what it did was it put me in a posture to be able to listen and to hear. And then the children's books came after that. And they just keep coming. They just keep coming.
And the one we have right now is I Am Beautiful.
Yes.
Why was it important for you to write this particular book?
So when I wrote this book, I remember when I got all the books delivered to me and I sat down on my couch and I was reading the book. When I read it, when you're working on a project, there's a lot of things you just don't think about. You're just thinking about getting it done. But when I read it, I started to think about the evolution of where I am today. And so there was a time where I didn't feel good about myself. So some of the words that are in the book, there's a time where I would not have been able to say those things.
So was this somewhat of an affirmation to your little?
Oh, yes.
Miss Grayson?
Absolutely. It absolutely was. And so it was very emotional for me. So it was a recognition of the healing that took place. It was a recognition of me loving how I was designed, me loving who I am. And just it's the importance of sharing this with little girls and big girls too. And so I wrote the book for little girls, but big girls are really being impacted by the
that's
book as
because
well.
the big girls still have to deal with the little girl inside of them. And
Absolutely.
It's interesting that you say that because, it's hard sometimes being a woman. And we have so much out there telling us how we should look, what we should say, how we should feel, that sometimes if we don't have the right direction, we'll go any which way.
Absolutely. And so for me, I would say my foundation comes from three different places. Number one, my father was very affirming. And so I can remember the Dionne when Dad wasn't around, and then the Dionne when Daddy was around. And so, and my father, he's been gone for 2 years now. But one thing that my dad did is every time we talked, he affirmed me. Every time we talked. And so when Dad does that, you believe what your father tells you.
That's right.
And then my mom, there were some things that she taught me, especially in high school and in your 20s. The high school and 20s are hard. And so my mom taught me, like, it's okay to, wear certain things, and you can show your little waist. You can do this. And so her teaching me that, and then just the foundation with my relationship with God too, I think is very important.
And it's funny, you stirred up something in me when you were talking about your father. My father too transitioned 2 years ago. And it's interesting how you said when my dad showed up and when my daddy showed up. Because if you have been loved by your father, you can say daddy very affirming and and feeling like I know who I am.
Yes.
Because when he looked into your eyes
Yes.
and you looked into his, you felt loved.
Yes.
And you felt beautiful.
Yes.
But a lot of our girls don't have
Right.
that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And something that, and I say this not selfishly, but one thing that I noticed right away when he was gone was the affirmation that I heard all the time. Like he would always tell me, "You a stallion. You one of those prize horses." You know.
love it.
And when Dad says that to you, it dictates how you move. It dictates how you allow other people, other men, to treat you. And so
And don't let nobody
very,
mess
right,
with little Dionne.
Right.
Because Dad going to have something to say, right?
Right. Absolutely.
That is so true, because I'm thinking about it, and I know that, like, my dad would call me Pooh, and it was from Winnie the Pooh. And so when he would say that, he would say it so tenderly, but then I would also hear the way he would talk very stern and very confident when he was in other spaces and places. But when he was with me,
Yes.
he knew how to soften his voice. And there was
Yes.
something about the softening of his voice that, again, was comforting. But I mean, we are talking about our dads, but I think it is important.
Yes.
How important it is for a woman to have a male figure like their father in
That
their life to
affirmation.
tell them they're beautiful. And even if they don't, this book can, right?
Right, that's right, that's right. And something really interesting as I was, kind of doing research when I was putting all this together, 11% of, according to the World Health Organization, only 11% of women around the world feel comfortable referring to themselves as beautiful. And so even when we did some video shoots and I had people say, "I am beautiful," and people were uncomfortable referring to themselves.
Are you talking
as-
about little girls who are watching
not
the
the
videos?
not the little girls.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they were good. They were good. If you look at the videos, you'll see that. But you can just tell that there was a uncomfortableness that people had about referring to themselves as beautiful. But I think society has its one facet of what beautiful means. Beautiful is so many different things. It's not just what's on the outside, but there's so many wonderful facets on the inside of us that make us beautiful.
And is that what you're telling the little girls in this book?
I am, and that's what the event was about at my book launch. That's what the I Am Beautiful was about.
And were you able to see the change from when these little girls walked into the room, did the exercises, read the book, to when they left with the book?
Listen, we set the stage for a wonderful and beautiful event for the young ladies. And so we didn't hold back on anything. The decorations were beautiful. We wanted them to feel very special. Even the volunteers, when the girls walked in, they said, "Hello, beautiful."
I think we even have some
Yeah,
video from
we do.
When you guys had that. But
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more.
And so one thing I'll say, so compliments from parents are the big thing for me. And some of the things that I heard from parents, one parent told me that every morning now her daughter says, "Hello, beautiful." And so that was something that she didn't do before. And then I ran into a parent. I just run into people and they're like, "You were the lady from the I Am Beautiful event." And she said that, I say this with all due respect and it tickles me. She said, "I'm so tired of reading your book every night to my girls." And I said, that is the biggest compliment because they want to read that every night. But just imagine you saying those words, "I am beautiful, I am confident."
And saying
you're
it at a
reading that-
young age.
Yes.
And I'm seeing some of the images from that photo shoot.
Yes.
Oh, these girls are beautiful.
Oh, yeah, they are. They had a good time. It was amazing. And so it was such a feel-good event. And everybody is looking. And I honestly did it just as a book launch. I did not anticipate doing it next year, but there's a demand for it. And, a sponsor came forward. So we gon' do it again. for
Hey,
the
let's do it
girls.
again.
We're going to do it again for
You
the
might have to
girls.
do a I Am Beautiful Big Girls too.
Right. Right.
Tell me this. When you were writing this book and illustrating this book, how important was it to make sure there was representation in the book?
That's really important with all of my books. With the first set of books that I wrote are called the Children's Gift Series. And so there's 10 books in the series. I have them in English and in Spanish.
I love that, first
And-
of all. I saw them because you're showing all these different career paths that kids
Yes.
can do.
Yes, and that's something that I'm very passionate about, that everybody was designed with purpose. Everybody has special gifts that they can do. And so this is a way for the littles, for the early readers to be able to explore what some of those things are. And so what I love about the books is that they have cross-cultural appeal, those specifically. So you can look at a book and somebody might be Indian and say, this looks like my daughter. And my response is yes. Or somebody that's Muslim, this looks like my daughter. Or somebody that's Black. And so all of the characters, when you look at them, you see different minority groups in the character. And that's very important. Someone earlier today said to me, she looks like my little girl. So I love when people do that.
And it's important because also kids are able to see the world in the books they read. Absolutely.
Just imagine being in a classroom, and a lot of times when I go to classrooms, you don't see books with Black and brown. Not the majority. The majority of the books don't have Black and brown kids. Just imagine being a Black and brown kid, and all of the books, there's nobody that looks like you. It taints your perception of what the world is. And so for me, it was very important. Like, you'll see a lot of different races in the book, but my main characters remain kids of color. And that's intentional because slightly over 10% of children's books have Black kids as main characters. And for other minority groups, it's even less.
And when you say that number, I think back, when I was a kid, what were the books that I was reading or seeing? I definitely know that there were more Black characters in those books. But then I think about my mother's books and then my grandmother's books, right? How that, again, helps us to shape our world.
That's right.
What's next?
What's next is I do have another book that I'm working on. And it's funny, all of my books are, and I really didn't even realize that. You just kind of do what you feel moved to do. Like, I do have a book about daddy-daughter relationships. It's called You and I. And then I Am Beautiful. And I do have another children's book that I finished. I'm not going to get to it towards the middle of 2025. But it's just the importance of friendships and feeling accepted. And so it's a really good book. One of my best friends, she came to Milwaukee. She lives in Atlanta for the I Am Beautiful event. And I read the transcript to her. And we both just cried, when I read it to her. And I said, you tell me why you're crying. Why are you crying? And she said, because I was that misfit. And I said, I was too. That's why I wrote it. And so just to be okay with you feeling different and just showing the evolution of beautiful friendships that can develop. And so it's amazing to me how things that caused me so much pain, you think you get over it and then you're done. And now all of this stuff is coming back.
Girl, beauty for ashes.
Right. And then I'm using it in children's. It wasn't intentional. This wasn't intentional at all. So I'm really having a good time. So I have some stuff in the pipe that I'm working on.
So do you feel that you're walking in your purpose now?
Oh, absolutely. So I think there's so many different facets. So many different facets of different things that we do. I never thought, honestly, when I wrote my first children's book, I thought it was one book. I'm the passion person. I'm the walk-in purpose person. And so I thought it was going to be one book for preteens about, kids having superpowers with their careers. But it turned into 10. And I'm like, okay. And it was for kindergarten through second grade. And so I really am enjoying this space. I enjoy traveling, talking to kids. When you go into schools, the expression on kids' face when they see you and they know you wrote the book is priceless. And when you see things click, there's a young lady that I've seen at events at least twice. And every time I see her, I can see it clicking for her. Like, you wrote this? I want to write too. And like, she always just talks to me about it. And I can see she's 11. And so this is possible for her because she can touch me. She can see me. She sees my picture in the book. So that's very important to me.
Representation is so
It is very important.
And Dionne Grayson, you are important too, and that's why you're Positively Milwaukee.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for coming. Is there someone in your community doing amazing work? An unsung hero, or someone just with an inspiring story to uplift us all? Well, I want to hear from you because I want to talk to them. Why don't you reach out to me with the email on the screen? And the next time you tune in, they may just be sitting next to me here on the PozCast.